I've been in various places where they've shown the movie to young people, and they come out and up to me and say, "What was that?" I said, "Well, what do you mean?" They said, "Well, what did we see?" I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, it was like nothing we've ever seen," because they've been brought up now in a digital age. And I said, "Well, what you just saw was real. There was hardly any special effects in the movie at all." And what makes it different is that it's all puppets.
And we were embarking on our very first highly complex, totally synthetic feature film in fantasy realm. Dark Crystal was several years in the making. It was before we shot it. The Creature Shop was involved in designing and building, and during those years I would visit periodically, and every time I went in there I was amazed at how much more capable and complex these characters were. You know, they were doing things that just seemed miraculous.
I think from the first screen test that I remember my dad doing in the backyard of our house with marionettes in Armonk, New York, to actually shooting was years. And that was an extraordinary leap for the time, to be trying to do something like that as live action. Dark Crystal was really more of a lifelike illusion.
It was filmed in real time, and puppets don't do anything, basically. You know, and I have to create the illusion that they're doing everything.
Jim Henson once said to me, explaining what it's like working with puppets, he said, you know, basically puppets can do anything that an actor can do. And he thought for a moment, he said, except walk and talk, but otherwise we can do anything.
Definitely puppetry and animatronics is always working within an enormous amount of restrictions. There's some things the characters do well, and there's some that they don't. And you definitely cater what the character does and the character's personality and its physical traits.
It was a scary thing, I think, even for Jim to embark upon. You know, he co-directed it with Frank Oz, and the two of them worked all the time together trying to figure out how to shoot the thing.
He was very aware of the limitations, but he was always trying to transcend those.
As we were pioneering, we built a lot of prototype work. And so part of my design is based on the mechanics, or how we are going to bring them to life. And what brought these creatures to life was the extraordinary talents of everybody, not only the way it looked, but how people manipulated them and moved them.
So going into the film, the problem was, how do we harness all the power of these characters, and how do we put something coherent on the screen?
Stay, friend, prophecy. Prophecy caused all this trouble.
That prophecy?
Yes.
That's why Skeksis killed Gelfling?
Yes. Bad mistake. Skex is afraid. Fear Gelfling.
But you're Skeksis.
But I am friend. Save you from Garthim.
Ultimately, the characters as they appeared in the film, many of them required 5 or 6 people to work, and that was also the first time that we had probably any character that required more than 2 people to operate, and that had its own huge layers of complexity in terms of rehearsing and coordinating a team.
And inside each Skeksis was a main performer like myself, who had his arm over his head working the head of the character, and the other arm working the left arm. I was looking at a monitor that was tied to my chest, and then in there with me was the guy who did the right hand. So we couldn't see anything outside the character, only the monitor. And our group of cable performers were under the floor following us along, and they were listening in little earphones to the audio and to the director. There was a dining scene where we shot these Skeksis eating in a very corrupt, sloppy way.
It seems to me that Gelfling has escaped, huh? No Gelfling ever escaped from my deadly garden.
There were all these little kind of bug-like creatures that were sort of tarantula-sized that would crawl around and skitter around on the floor and across the table. Those things were funny because we never knew where they were going to go. They would start out in one direction and then they would turn. And so we had to very carefully watch the monitor and peek through our costumes to see so that we could catch them and eat them or react to them in some way. At that point, I thought Jim's optimism has really run amok this time. We'll never be able to shoot this film. But we did, and within a couple of weeks, we could ad-lib in those characters.
The technology of puppeteering a creature that has like 4 or 5 different people is like trying to get 5 people to think the same spontaneously from moment to moment. There's a lot of rehearsal, and somehow it comes together. There's like a Zen thing, like, you know, the bobsled or luge guys, you know, you just start to feel each other's weight. Everybody gets in tune, and it just works out.
Usually some aspect of the puppeteer's personality is what makes a great character.
What we created, and I deliberately did, was create creatures and puppets that allowed a performance. So it's almost, I say, you could do that on a stage.
You fraud! Away, please, sire! Liar! Slave squeezer!
Pacing of a character is very defining in its personality. So often you'll find performers almost start with what's the metronome of the character. Some of the movement studies and all that went on with Dark Crystal, a lot of those choices were being made beforehand, and then the suits and the puppets would need a lot of adjusting to enable the character to have the posture and pacing of the Skeksis or the Mystics. I think it's pretty much what actors do often as well. They try to think, well, what's the at-rest norm metronome of this character, that when I then speed it up is when that character is excited or tense, and when I slow it down is when that character is particularly relaxed. And that's always a nice jump-off point in figuring out physicality of a character.
Because of the strangeness of all the creatures, we can get away with a lot. You expect them to move in a strange way. However, the Gelflings are problematical because they're more human. And to bring that to life was a lot of hard work on everybody's part, you know, especially Jim and Kathy, who puppeteered, that they worked hard to make them have a human quality.
The reason I like puppetry, for me, it's a feeling of being able to anthropomorphize all living things. It's a complete world of possibility for emotion. And so puppets are a great form of expression of that for me, and Dark Crystal appealed to me for that reason.
No, Jen! Oh, Jen, they hurt your arm.
For one thing, when you do a movie with live people, it enables you to have a spontaneous, in the moment, real-time, improvisational give and take between the two actors. There's a listening quality, and you've got someone right in your face, right in space with you, where you can interact, be spontaneous, be funny, be clever, be human.
Where are we?
Safe.
Safe? I don't think anywhere is safe anymore.
You can't just translate a puppet from a piece of paper exactly as it's drawn and have it work properly.
What was sundered and undone shall be whole, the two made one, by Gelfling hand or else by none.
The actor's process is always the same whether you're an actor or a puppeteer. You look at the words, you look at the action, and you try to make it as real as you can, and you try to do whatever that character is doing at that moment. We just do it in another voice, and we do it up through our arms and not through our bodies.
Wait. This is a piece of the dark crystal.
Jim and I were trying to figure out how to make the puppets walk realistically. Now, usually we just do this, but that doesn't look realistic. We wanted to get a human gait in there somehow, and we were trying to figure out how to do this. And finally, I had practiced a bunch of things, and I said, Jim, I tried this thing of walking on my knees. It kind of works. I said, okay. So we did this one scene where we did the whole thing on our knees in the caves with the Skeksis, the bad Skeksis. We did that on our knees. That scene.
Do not be afraid. I am here to help you, yes. Come, show them. Gelflings live with Skeksis together in peace. Please.
It was even hard for Jim to have fun on that set, believe me, because it was just too physically taxing. I mean, we were all just working our butts off, you know, it was just really physically taxing for all of us.
Gelfling, you die!
The discomfort is something that we're all familiar with and we try to take for granted and try not to think about too much. All that counts is what's on the screen. It doesn't matter what it takes to get it there, but the characters have to move and relate in a certain way on the screen. If there were scenes where a character is moved rapidly, all of these other people who were helping perform that character were duck walking and crawling and falling around underneath to get there. None of that really matters as long as the character on camera looks all right.
You know, this movie screened a lot to people as it was in post, and it got a reputation in the industry of being a disaster, a cursed film, and a fiasco. When it was finally done, everybody in Hollywood had sort of written it off. And then they started showing it to real people. And a lot of these real audiences just loved it and said, this is incredible. This is one of the best things I've ever seen, you know, blah, blah, blah. Then this filtered back into Hollywood, and then the conventional wisdom in town completely turned around, and there was a lot of enthusiasm for it when it finally opened.
Indeed, the end of Dark Crystal is, you know, integrating the dark and the light. There was always a universal message in what my dad was doing about tolerance and understanding each other. And in some ways, there's a little bit of that thematically going on in Dark Crystal, in terms of probably the inner experience of embracing all sides of yourselves and then yourself, and then also being able to see and recognize that in others.
And now the prophecy is fulfilled.
The Dark Crystal was a terrific experience for everybody who worked on it. It was a chance for us to step up to another level in terms of the techniques we used, and I still look back on it very, very fondly.
Jim said to me that it was the best film he'd ever made and his favorite. He said, I can watch this over and over again. It's like an exciting new discovery.
Make your world in its light.
Dark Crystal came out of my dad's most productive period in his life. And he was creating so much so fast at that time.
He was really the only actual genius I ever worked with. Because he was so endlessly creative, and also because he was a great leader. I mean, he really made you want to do the best you could and work far beyond what you thought your capacity was.
As a creative person, he was a total visionary. He was a very positive risk taker, not afraid to fail, and everybody could feel that.
He understood how to bring creative people together and allow them to have fun and really run with their talents.
Anybody who worked with Jim Henson's work experience was flavored by a close relationship with Jim Henson. It was the way he worked. The thing I learned from working with Jim is appreciation is the best drug there is. Enthusiasm is contagious.
Dark Crystal was actually 5 years of my life, but I think it reflects some of Jim's philosophy and coincidentally, I think all our own philosophies about life and the nature of good and evil. And we made the movie we wanted to see.